You're listening
to the Beer O'Clock, the Beer O'Clock Show.
You're listening to the Beer O'Clock Show.
It's Beer O'Clock and this is the Beer O'Clock Show. My name is Mark and joining me, as always, to go through the beers is my beer buddy Steve. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, mate. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Very good. Tonight we look at a brewery from up Manchester way as a second instalment of our pre-Indie Man Beer Con preview thing. A brewery that's developed quite the buzz about the Twitter sphere and elsewhere in the last year or so, and that brewery is Cloudwater. So, in addition to the interview Steve did with Paul Jones from Cloudwater, which you'll hear at the end of the show after the tinkly music, we are of course reviewing one of their beers, and that beer is the New Zealand Hopfen Weisse. Hopfen Weisse, which we'll get to in a short little while. But before then, Stevie, what you been drinking, mate?
What have I been drinking? Oh, it's been an interesting week beer-wise for me. I was going to try and have a quiet week last week, but that went down the pan very, very quickly. With massive thanks to Gary from the Owl Trail. He sent me down a bottle of Pliny the Elder.
I saw that on Twitter.
Yes. And it's the first time I've ever had more than a tiny little taster of it, because the last couple of times I've had to share it with many, many people.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, mate, it pretty much blew me away. It was absolutely stunning. Really flavoursome. I got schooled on the evening that I posted it on Instagram as well, because I never knew it was the first double IPA ever created, and I'd made some comments that some people took umbrage to and pointed out that shouldn't be comparing it to beers that are made now, because actually when that was first brewed, it was the only one of its kind. So it was nice to try that. So I'm really grateful for Gary to sending that down to me and letting me try it. So that was probably the highlight of my week. And then just a few other ones. I've had a very IPA fueled week this week. So I gave the Wolfie Smith a try, which you was talking about last week, from the Ebria Discovery box that we've got. Yeah, I could see what you were saying about it. It was kind of malty and flat, and there wasn't really any sort of punch to it. I mean, decent enough beer, but in terms of it being like an IPA, I think it was struggling a little bit.
Yeah, it's a bit like an English IPA, but that doesn't do credit to the hops that were in it.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, like all of these things, it might have been that, maybe the bottle's past its best, or who knows. But it was enjoyable enough. Also from that same box though, I did try the Vocation can that was in there, which is Heart and Soul, which is a session IPA. Mate, I tell you what, the flavours that are in that you would never have put that as a session IPA. It's packed full of the big hoppy flavours that you expect from a bigger IPA, coming in at 4.5%. Really, really sessionable, really tasty. That's one to really watch out for. And I'll look forward to seeing what your views are on that one when you get round to it. And then just finishing the other mention that I want to make this week, again, what's rapidly becoming the brewery of the year for me, Buxton, another new brew from them, Red Rock IPA. Wow, a red IPA. It was like sherbet, fizzy kind of sweet drops. Just really, really tasty. Everything that I'm looking for in an IPA right now. But because it was red as well, it had a lot of caramel and other notes going on in it. So again, that's one to keep an eye out for if you can get a hold of it. Red Rock IPA by Buxton. Nice. What about yourself, mate? What have you been up to this week?
Oh, not much.
Not much again.
Well, I had lots of work things on during the week, and I was travelling a little bit on the weekend, so I couldn't really get into anything. But a couple of weeks ago, when I was up at the in-laws, my father-in-law, who knows I like my beer but doesn't necessarily understand the type of beers I like, very kindly got me a few bottles from his local Lidl's, because obviously they're doing their quote-unquote craft beer range now.
Yeah.
But what he picked up was a bottle of Unicorn from Robinson's.
Okay.
And
I've seen it, yeah.
My comment on Untapped was, if Tom Jones did a song called Malt Bomb, it would be featured in the commercial for this beer. So that should sum it up for you. It was a decent beer. It was nice and clean. Some decent caramel flavours in there. Typical English bitter, really. Nothing to write home about. Very malty.
To be honest with you, mate, I think if if this suggested hop shortage is anything to be believed, we better get used to the malt bombs because there's not going to be a lot of hops around. It's going to make choosing beers for the next few seasons quite difficult.
I know, but fortunately I've got a good supply here, and this weekend is F1 weekend, so I'll be getting into the beers.
Excellent, as will I, Indie Man.
Oh, and also I'm heading to the Old Fountain on Wednesday.
Oh, very nice.
Expect at least a couple on my list to read out next week.
Woo!
Woo! Right, let's get on to some news. We've got a few items of news.
Yeah, there are a very mixed bag of news this week, mate.
Here's your pips. Beep, 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 beep.
Okay, just because we haven't had anything from those Scottish scamps for ages, here's some double Brewdog news to start us off this week. They're starting a new range of beers, so you'll be aware that recently in their bars they've been doing some brews which they've called pilot brews, and then they've been numbered, so pilot brew 001, 002, all that sort of thing. Yeah. Well, they've decided they actually want to put a brand to that, and they're now calling them the B-sides. So just keep your eye out for that. If you see a beer that's branded as a B-side in a Brewdog bar, it's one of the beers that's been brewed on their 10-litre pilot kit up in Ellen. The other little tidbit of Brewdog news is Dog Eat Dog, which is the hot dog and beer place in the Angel in London, is due to open on October the 16th. So they're going to have a selection of gourmet hot dogs, 12 draft beers, curated bottle list plus bottomless refills from our unique square root soda fountain. It's going to be dog and child friendly. They're going to be open from 10 a.m. serving breakfast and coffee as well. So might be worth a visit to a slightly different Brewdog venture.
That sounds pretty cool.
It does, doesn't it? That's in Essex Road, which is 5 minutes from the Angel Station in London. As a direct contrast to Brewdog news, here's some Robinsons news actually. Seeing as we were just chatting about them, not being one to miss out on an opportunity. Once again teaming up with Iron Maiden to celebrate 10 million pints of Trooper being brewed. They've released a new limited edition brew called Trooper 666. Now, this is available exclusively from Morrison's in bottles from the 1st of October, so it's widely available now. It's a 6.6% supercharged version of the 4.7% malt bomb that is Trooper. It's out for a limited period only, and it's in 330ml bottles. So if anybody does drink a bottle of Trooper 666, let us know what it's like, and then I'll decide whether to rush out and get one or to avoid it altogether.
I'll tell you what, that doesn't surprise me at all, considering Maiden's prevalence for re-releasing remixes, remasters, same album, different cover, constantly.
Yeah, I think we said this at the time, didn't we? When we reviewed it, Trooper in a show way back when. I'm sure we said expect there to be more Iron Maiden themed beers, because if this works, it'll be a marketing opportunity too good to miss for them. Okay, so back to the news. Camera GB have opened their Beer of the Year 2015 nominations. All you have to do is send your top 3 beers in an email to hq@cameragb.org. That's hq@camrgb.org to get your favourite beers of the year in for that little competition. Craft Beer Hour, which is something that we've been involved in since it very first started almost a year ago now, have announced their lineup for October, and what a lineup Craft Beer Hour have got during October. So launching this week, they're featuring Cloudwater Brew, as are we. Seem to be following a trend here again, where we lead, others follow. Then to celebrate their 50th Craft Beer Hour, Thornbridge are hosting. The week after that, Wylam are hosting. And then the final week of October, which is going to be a Halloween Hopperween Monster Mash Tun Halloween special, is being hosted by Weirdbeard. So get your beers in for those and get involved on Craft Beer Hour. For those who don't know what it is, it's every Tuesday night on Twitter between 9 and 10 o'clock. Use the hashtag Craft Beer Hour and get involved in the banter. And then finally in this week's news, Camden Town, working with Waitrose, have revealed Britain's first growler system at the King's Cross Waitrose branch. Now this is pretty big news actually. You can go into King's Cross Waitrose, you can pick up a growler and you can fill it up with Camden Town beer in the shop.
Wow.
Apparently this is going to pave the way for it being rolled out across a number of Waitrose stores. And hopefully one would assume around the country with other breweries featuring their beers. So keep your eye out for that one as well. And that's the end of this week's news.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I wasn't sure looking around at my notes, but yeah, that's it. That's all the news for this week. Quite,
Cool.
let's say, quite a mixed bag this week.
It is a little bit of a mixed bag. But let's get on to this complete not mixed bag of beer. Cloudwater New Zealand Hopfen Weisse, which is a 6.5% Hopfen Weisse from their autumn range. And New Zealand Hopfen Weisse because it's got New Zealand hops in. So it has Motueka and Nelson Sauvin, or Sauvin, or however you pronounce it.
Oh, there's a lovely aroma coming out of the bottle. Just crack my while you've been chatting there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's as fresh as you like as well. And up front, we'll say thanks to Paul from Cloudwater for sending these down to us to try on tonight's show. We've been chatting to Paul for a while about which beer to feature because Cloudwater are very much a brewery that brew their beers based on what ingredients are available to them for that season. And you make sure you hang around for the interview at the end. It's a long interview, but I don't think there's ever been a time when I've interviewed someone for this show where I could have actually recorded hours worth of content. I don't think I've ever spoken. I've spoken to a lot of passionate people, but chatting to Paul, that the passion and enthusiasm that came across for him for what he does and why he does it is just brilliant. So make sure you listen to that interview, and you can hear all about how they use the ingredients and how they've got different ranges depending on the seasons.
Yeah. So this, for me, this pour is really murky. Does it pour murky for you?
Mine, you can't even see through it. It's
No.
proper murky. That
Lovely aroma coming off.
lovely aromas on there.
Slightly creamy aromas.
It is. You're getting the big tropical aromas that you'd expect from the hops in there. Maybe a little bit of lime on there, maybe, and there's definitely a little bit of banana on there as well.
Yep. So let's get into it, mate.
Yeah. Cheers.
Oh wow, that Motueka comes straight through.
Oh, it does. It comes straight through, but it's instantly softened by all the other flavours that are in there. So it's a little bit wheaty. There's quite some floral notes going on in the background. All that's coming through. You get the big hit of hops up front, but then you get all these other flavours that are playing around in the background. Oh, I think you called it on the aroma. It's creamy. It's like a really creamy. It's really thick, full of body, full of flavour. That's incredible. That is really, really good.
Yeah, really bitter, but it's got that sweet yeastiness coming through that slightly banana-y you expect from a Hopfen Weisse. But like you say, it's lots of body. It tastes really thick, and there's just a lovely sweetness coming. I mean, the bitterness from the hops kind of resides, but there's a sweet creaminess that's kind of balancing that as well.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I believe you've been a studious young man, Steve. So I need you to explain to me exactly what is a Hopfen Weisse.
Okay, it's interesting because I started looking it up to try and find out what a Hopfen Weisse is, and apparently it's not a style. It doesn't actually exist. So I continued searching, and with thanks to the guys at the British Guild of Beer Writers who put me in touch with a couple of writers who are based in Germany, I was able to get a little bit of background on the Hopfen Weisse. So the style, if it is considered a style, which some don't actually consider it as a style, some consider it as a bastardization of a style, which I think we're seeing more and more of in beer these days. But it goes back to 2007 when Garrett Oliver from Brooklyn Brewery and Hans-Peter Drexler from Schneider Weiss did a collaboration. So basically what they did, they took a wheat beer and they basically threw hops at it, hence
Right.
Hopfen Weisse. Essentially what it is, it's a strong dry hopped wheat beer. And this was kind of almost corroborated by two writers for me. So and I did say to both of them that we'd give them a mention on the show, and thanks for helping us out. So Sylvia Kopp, who's the author of a book called Barley and Hops, the craft beer book, she very much gave us the history and summed up the style in a sentence. So it's a strong dry hopped wheat beer. But then Joe Stang, who's also another author of a book around Brussels in 80 beers, goes on to say that he's not sure it's a style in itself, more like an inevitability as new wave brewers work out ways to squeeze more hop aroma into classic frames. He then goes on to cite, and most people, and most of the research I did online as well, will cite the Brooklyn Schneider Weiss as being the first of this style. However, it's that they both agree that it's a hoppy wheat beer, great potential, and basically, people are now working with it as a new style of beer. So what we've got here is Cloudwater, who are quite possibly one of the most progressive breweries in the UK right now, essentially taking that style and doing exactly what Sylvia was saying. They're throwing hops at it. So we've got the New
Big
Zealand
time.
hops thrown what's essentially a wheat beer, hence why we're getting some of those banana-y, wheaty flavours coming through, because the underlying style is a wheat beer. And then, as I say, it's just been taken to a point where they've stretched the style almost to its breaking point just by throwing hops at it.
Yeah, those hops are puckering. I tell you what, I took a mouthful and it takes me a second to regain control of my senses or of my mouth so I can actually talk. It's just such huge flavors in there.
That is an absolute brilliant beer.
If you're really into your hops, definitely, yeah. I mean, I'm finding it quite palatable because of that, because I really like wheat beers, which will shock people who listened to the very early episodes of this podcast. But I really like them now. So you're getting that sweetness bedding in underneath the bitterness, but the bitterness lingers and it's like a vapor in my nasal cavities. They're kind of swirling around. It's one of these full-featured beers that we occasionally have on the show where you really do get an experience from drinking it. Yeah, he's nodding, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm speechless. Again, it's one of these situations where I don't really want to say anything more over the top of what you've said there, because I think you've summed it up perfectly, mate. I can understand why the guys at Cloudwater wanted us to feature this beer as kind of a showcase beer, because there's so much going on in there. It's really tasty. It's really flavoursome. This is one that I can actually see myself going back to a few times while it's out during the autumn.
Yeah. It's funny, it'd be a great summer beer, but at this time of year, because there's so much body to it, it's quite a filling beer. So I can imagine it'd be, quite warming on a cool evening as well. Because it's not one of these light drink it in the sun pilsner wheat beer styles. There's actually more to it. It's so interesting.
I'm really enjoying that. I'm enjoying every mouthful. I'm enjoying what's going on in the glass. I'm enjoying the finish that it's leaving in my mouth as well. Whereas I suppose a lot of the beers that I tend to favour leave a lasting bitterness. This is leaving a lasting sweetness, which is really nice. It's not cloyingly sweet. It's a well balanced sweetness. Really good stuff.
Yeah, I would prefer if it had a slightly more carbonation, just to lift it a little bit. but it's certainly still drinkable.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Um, and yeah, again, just really to say, make sure you hang around for the interview at the end, because Paul talks about where the inspiration for this beer came from, why they chose to go for this, and the hops that were available for it. And he goes on to talk all about the seasonality of their beers as well.
That will be I haven't listened to it yet, but I shall be listening to it intensely. Because it's really weird. I mean, for me, from my perception, Cloudwater kind of came out from nowhere in the last year or so. Suddenly they were all over Twitter. And I think you told me that they hired someone to do their marketing who used to be involved with Brewdog?
I think so.
Okay. But whoever it is...
I'm sure someone will tweet us and tell us whether we're right or not there.
Whoever it is has their finger on it big time, because they just hit the ground running from my perception. You know, suddenly they appeared, and now it's Cloudwater everywhere, and everyone loves Cloudwater. And their branding is fantastic. It's not typical brewery branding. I mean, the bottles here, they've got a nice photograph, very clean labeling.
I think their branding and their labeling is an example of how it can be done properly, because what it does is it tells you everything you want on the back of that bottle as well. So it tells you what the style is, the ABV, the volume, the bittering hop, the aroma hop, what malts, what yeast. It even goes so far as telling you they don't so much have best before dates, but they've got this little note on the side that hops fade fast, most enjoyable before the 1st of March 2016. So, and they're all over that. And again, without going on about it too much, Paul talks about all of that in the interview at the end, and why it's so important to Cloudwater as well, to make sure that information's available to the consumer.
And for any brewers who are listening, the yeast they use is Lallemand Munich Classic, and the malt is wheat malt, Maris Otter, Caramalt, Light Munich. There you go. You can do your own at home now.
There you go.
That's all you need to know.
Yes.
And of course, the Motueka for the bittering, and Motueka and Nelson Sauvin for the flavouring. For the aroma, rather. My apologies.
Right, now we've also got, this is just to throw a bit of a curveball in here. They did also send us down bottles of their summer range, US Hopfen Weisse, as well. So I thought it would be nice, rather than do a full review, just to give this a little go to see what the differences is in terms of the hop profile. Now, with that in mind, and what we've just said about their labelling, the labels on the summer one does say that this bottle was most enjoyable before the 19th of September. So it's probably a little bit past its best, but I'm keen to give it a go, just to see if the underlying style is still there, and if the use of different hops makes any real difference to the drink.
Yeah, and the US hops that they've used in this, for bittering they've used Pearl, and for aroma they use Simcoe, Citra, and Mosaic. The malt is wheat, best ale, light Munich, and the yeast is WB06.
Well, I've got to say I'm getting the Simcoe straight away.
Oh yeah.
On the aroma, that's all Simcoe. So I'm looking forward to this. I mean, this is kind of an extra beer that I've squeezed into this season, mate.
You're doing these double beer episodes.
I just, the generosity of the guys sending us both the beers, it felt only right to do it justice and do them both on one show.
I agree.
Okay.
Yes.
Cheers.
So I'll do my best. Cheers, mate. Okay, that appears to be much more like a traditional wheat beer, I think. But with really clean flavours coming over top of it. Really clean bittering.
It's more citrusy, isn't it? You get a really big hit of citrus from the US hops in it that just come, and whereas the hops in the New Zealand version I think were a little bit more subtle, and more in balance with the other flavors. This is a typically US hopped beer. It's all about the hops. They're big, they're bold, they're brash, they're screaming their way through, they're pushing their way to the front of the queue. They're there and they're just all up front. And then you've got the wheat beer sat behind it. Again, works really, really well. And I can just imagine what this must have tasted like when it was at its absolute best.
Yeah. And in contrast to the New Zealand one as well, whereas the New Zealand one had a lot of body to it, it was quite a thick profile. This is much cleaner, much more shallower, shall we say? So it gives the hops more room to express themselves.
Yeah.
On a beery level. So you're getting the flavors from all those lovely hops coming through. Nice, subtle bitterness, but the flavors are right up there. And underneath is just like this very light sweetness, kind of lifting it up with that Weisse yeast as well. It's not too bad, this one. Which one do you prefer so far? I know you've only had a few mouthfuls of this one.
I've got to say, I prefer the New Zealand one. I think it's more well balanced as a beer. It's got a lot more body to it. There's a lot more going on in there. It might be, again, as I say, because this one is maybe a few weeks past its best, that's not got as much going on in there. But then there's a huge difference in the ABV between them as well. So the New Zealand one is 6.5. The US one's 5.2.
Mm-hmm.
That was released as part of the summer range. If you put this beer in the summer, it's a perfect summer beer. It's completely refreshing. It's crisp. It's citrusy. It's everything that you want from a summer beer. I can understand why they've upped the ABV and they've got that more body and character in the New Zealand version because it's part of the autumn range. But for me, it's the New Zealand one that wins out on this.
Yeah, I think I'll go with that as well. If the New Zealand one had the same level of body as this one, I think it would be a clear winner for me. Now that we're tasting this one, I think that the lighter body suits me more, but I like the hop characters coming through on the New Zealand one. But if we had this beer 3 or 4 months ago, before it was past its best, and those hops would have been much fresher, I can just imagine it being almost like a completely different beer as far as taste profile goes. So it's a shame that we didn't get this when it was at its best, but it's still super tasty.
Yeah, I mean both of them incredibly flavoursome. You can see there's a lot of skill and work gone into every aspect of these beers.
Oh yeah.
And you can really understand now why all the buzz is about Cloudwater. And I think also for me heading into Indie Man this weekend, Cloudwater have got a massive presence there. By all accounts, they're going to have their entire autumn range on a bar, and they're going to have some specials that they've been doing as well. They've been barrel aging some stuff. I'm really excited with what's to come from Cloudwater. I'm really excited about what's going to be in their winter range. And I think there's a bit in the interview with Paul at the end where I think I actually suggest to him a beer that they should do as well. So guys, if that one comes off, remember where you heard it first.
Barrel aged something, I bet.
No, it was something because apparently their actual first birthday isn't until around Valentine's Day next year. So that would probably surprise a lot of people. But they didn't actually start releasing beers until February. So their first actual anniversary of when they release beers is Valentine's Day. So I think I suggested to Paul that they should do some special Valentine's beer. And I think there was a slight twinkle in his eyes. So he was either taken aback by my suggestion of Valentine's Day or it's an idea that's now working through his head.
Okay, so while we finish this beer, let's move on to around the country are people who lovingly gaze at their mantle at a big empty spot with their prizeless prize sets, and that's for submitting an Instagram photo which Steve has selected this week's prizeless prize. So what do we have this week, mate?
Well, again, we've got, and I love it that I'm able to say this every week. we've got another first-time winner this week. And you say that people all around the country have that place on their mantelpiece. You can now extend that to people all around Europe who now have that place on their mantelpiece. For the winner of this week's prize, this prize is an image that I don't think you are ever going to better on this competition. And that's building it up before I show this to you and before our listeners get to have a look at it. But have a look at that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's nice.
This is a bottle of beer on top of a mountain range, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, Craft Dog, that's Craft Dog with a W rather than an O, is the winner of the coveted Great Big Box of Nothing and the prize, this prize, for a picture of wild beers Ninkasi on top of a mountain range in Norway. Now, that picture's up on our Instagram feed. It's linked through in the show notes. You're going to do well to ever better that. I'm putting the challenge out there. I want a better picture than that at some point, if one exists. And you can enter your own by putting your picture up on Instagram and using the hashtag Cheers Guys. And if it catches my eye, you will be the recipient of your very own Great Big Box of Nothing containing your prize, this prize.
Very good. And finally, to round off this week's hop topic.
Yeah, loosely tying into the theme of bastardization of styles, which is obviously, we've been talking tonight about the Hopfen Weisse and how it's not really a style, but it's come out of an original style that's had hops thrown at it. This week's hot topic is an interesting question, and I'm looking forward to your response to this one as well, which was, what does IPA even mean now? Now, as you can imagine, we had quite the response to this, so I'm just going to pick out a few tweets rather than go through them all. So first of all, Richard Brownhill said it means about as much as Saison does these days. It's a bit of a free-for-all. Mash Tun and Meow asked, if we're talking about the UK, then it's really just about things being hoppy, doesn't need to necessarily be strong or pow. Zesty Feels, also known as Emma, from the Crema Brewery, she said it means it smells and tastes appreciably of hops and there is sufficient hop bitterness present, but then she shrugs and doesn't really know what that means. Lots of people saying UK breweries not really sure what they're doing and they're just using it as a label to cash in on popularity. Roland Glue from Stephen Rowland's Beer Podcast, theoretically it should have an IBU of greater than 40 and that is all. Miles Lambert, number one fan, jumped in. Term IPA no longer tells me what a beer is. There are so many variations. It narrows it down a little but needs the extra description, i.e. English, American, black, Belgian or whatever. Martin Oates, an IPA to me is pale, bitter, bold, hoppy and powerfully balanced. Nostromo Brew Co, really hop forward, at least 4.5% and slightly higher than average carbonation, dry finish. And it goes on. Lots of similar suggestions to all of that thing, those things. So, mate, what does IPA mean to you these days?
Well, echoing what a lot of people there said, but it doesn't really mean much anymore because you don't know whether you're going to get an English IPA or an American IPA unless they specifically say so. I mean, there's even, when I was in Australia, they had like KIPA or KPA, Kiwi India Pale Ale, you know, IPAs made in New Zealand and shit like that. So essentially it's, if we're getting to the root of it, it's a beer where its primary characteristic is the hoppiness of it. Because that's, if you go back, way back when to, you know, hazy history time, IPAs came out of beers being heavily hopped so that they could last on the little boats all the way out to India. Whereas these days, an IPA is throw as much fucking hops as you can possibly can. And so, as we've seen in the last few weeks, you know, whether it's beers that we've got on the show or beers that we've had during the week, is you can have an IPA, it can be faintly American with a faintly English profile to it as well. So it doesn't need, I don't care about the ABV or something. I don't think that defines an IPA. It's purely how hoppy it is for me. I mean, you can have for me, if something is called a pale ale but it's really hoppy, I think of that as an IPA. Because the I doesn't stand for imperial. It's not looking at strength. It's India Pale Ale, which is how hoppy it is.
Which is the traditional style, yeah. And I think, as you say there, if you picking up on a couple of things you say there, obviously so far this season we've featured the Wylam Jakehead, which, for all intents and purposes, was a really well done English IPA with American hops.
Yeah,
fantastic profile. But then balance that out with the as yet unreleased revisited show that we've got coming up later this month, where we did the Fuller's Bengal Lancer. Again, an example of a fantastically English IPA. It's not massively hopped, and without putting too many spoilers out there, I was actually blown away by how good the Bengal Lancer was when we tried it again for the revisited show. But I agree with what you're saying, that, and again, I'm a self-confessed hophead. I love IPAs. They are my go-to beer. But for me, it's all about throwing as many hops at them as you can and giving me that big hoppy hit up front. I want big citrusy flavours all the way through, and I want a lasting bitterness as well. So it's been great that so many people have got involved in this week's hop topic. And let's keep the conversation going as well. So if you've got a view on this, what does IPA mean, or even what do you look for in an IPA? Let us know on Twitter. Use the hashtag hop topic, and we'll make sure we pick it up and respond to it.
Indeedy. And don't forget, you can get your beers from Ales by Mail, Beautiful Beers, Beer Merchants, and eBria, who all now offer a 10% discount to Beer O'Clock Show listeners on any beers from their website. So check out all the details on our beer list page on the website. What's coming up next week, mate? Because we've got a shit ton of Indie Man reviews. They're going to be featured in the show. But
there will be, yes, if all goes to plan.
But what's on the actual show in between all the Indie Man stuff?
The actual show next week, we are featuring a beer from Hamilton Brewery in Islington in London. We're featuring their N7, which, bearing in mind the conversation we've just had, is a pale ale, but actually on a lot of websites is listed as an India Pale Ale. It's listed as an IPA, and it possibly has a lot of the same characteristics as well. So that's the beer that we're going to feature on next week's show. And we've also got blogging icon Matt Total Curtis coming on to join us with his big microphone again, which obviously the listeners don't get to see, but Matt does have an incredible microphone when he comes on the show with us. So that's next week's show.
He is a cutie, as Matt. I look forward to seeing his face. Right. You can find us online at beeroclockshow.co.uk, on Twitter at beeroclockshow, on Instagram at beeroclockshow. Steve is on Untapped at beershowsteve, and I'm on Untapped at beershowmark, and on Twitter at beershowmark. Stick around after the tinkly music for Steve's epic interview with Paul Jones from Cloudwater, almost as long as this show itself. And until next week, Stevie.
It's been the absolute highlight of my week, mate.
And mine. Until next week. Bye-bye.
It's Beer O'Clock, and this week we're joined by Paul Jones, who's the co-founder of Cloudwater Brew Co.
Hey,
Paul,
thanks
welcome to the show. It's really great to have you here. We've been featuring one of your beers on this week's show, which is from your new autumn range. It's the New Zealand Hopfen Weisse. Tell us a little bit about the beer.
Yeah, sure. So Hopfen Weisse was a style of beer we started making right from the off. We made a Bergamo Hopfen Weisse back in the spring, and it worked really, really well. We've always tried to design our seasonal ranges to feature either hops or yeast or malt as appropriate, and Hopfen Weisse is a beer style that actually just features everything all at the same time. So off the success that we had of the Bergamo Hopfen Weisse, we moved through and did a single hop feature. So we really put a lot of Simcoe into the next batch. We did back it up with a couple of other hops to round it out a little bit. I think that's always a nice thing to do. And we decided to follow that on with US Hopfen Weisse. So really going to town with big, classic, juicy American hops, and we finished off pretty much the majority of our US allocation with that beer, knowing that we transitioned through to fresh new season New Zealand hops when they arrived to us, and that's exactly what we've used in our latest batch. It's Nelson Sauvin and Motueka. They both present with quite a savoury characteristic this year, a little bit more savoury than they have done previously. But again, with that big malty backdrop and all of those yeast notes, it works really, really well. And it's a great way, if you can get hold of a bottle of the US, stick it next to the NZ and see how you get on, because it's a pretty interesting process when you've got so much going on in a beer. To compare two very bold beers with different hop additions is pretty cool. It's as cool as comparing two very clean IPAs.
And at Cloudwater, you guys specialise in modern seasonal beer.
Correct, yeah.
That's your thing. So, to the average punter, what does that mean?
Well, I think to start off with, it means that we're not focusing on traditional beer making. We do, in the north of England, we do make a lot of cask beer, and we do look around for styles that we'd want to utilise and put our twist on. So it's not that you won't ever see us produce something like a bitter. We have one of those coming out pretty soon.
Yeah.
But modern really just reflects our mindset. We don't just look to British tradition or European tradition. We look way further back than some of the tradition that we're all currently aware of. We like to trawl through the history books a little bit, and we also like to keep in touch with very progressive developments over in the States and wonder how we might integrate some of those practices and processes and flavour combinations. And seasonal for us is really about putting the ingredients first. We love core range beer. I mean, we rely on other people's core beers time and time again, week after week. And there's certainly something very attractive about buffing a recipe up and a process up 10 times, 100 times. But also there's something really attractive about putting the ingredients first and saying, hey, this is an agricultural product. It's different every year. What we have that's fresh changes month after month. And so with James's years of experience behind us, we thought it was a pretty good time right at the start of running the business to dive in at the deep end and see what it would mean to us if we explored seasonality. So I think to the regular customer out there, that may not always be overly apparent in our beers. Some of the beer styles that we come out with maybe not the most common on the bar, but most of our beer is very drinkable, and we try and get the balance right. So I don't think necessarily all of that work is on the bleeding edge of what we do, even though it's very much forming the foundation of why we're why we're producing a Hopfen Weisse at this point in time, why we're producing a Grisette, and why we're not making any dark beer until autumn, for example.
Yeah. So there's no core range as such. No. Basically, what you do is you produce beers based on the season and the ingredients that are available to you within that season.
Sure, definitely. So we work with styles seasonally as much as we work with ingredients seasonally. So I think you'll probably find that, we really love hoppy beer, and so does most of the world. I mean, like pale ale is absolutely foundational for just about every brewery out there. So you'll find us making pales and IPAs year round. So they're year round styles that will change with the seasons. So the strength will change a little bit, the colour, the residual sweetness, the bitterness, as well as the hops that we feature. So there are those sort of subtle tweaks going on all the way throughout the year. But then you'll find us try to utilise hops really when they're at their freshest, fruits when they're coming into season, and it doesn't matter to us that they're not going to stick around for very long. If we want to work with something, we've given ourselves the freedom to do so, and we feel, even though it's incredibly hard to run a brewery like this, it would be much easier if we made 4 beers all year round, really on every single level, from logistics to sales to production. We like the challenge, and we're really happy to somehow be supported enough to keep going and keep exploring seasonality and see what we can find.
Okay, so the New Zealand Hopfen Weisse is part of the autumn range. What's the rest of the autumn range looking like at the moment?
The autumn range is it's looking pretty interesting actually. So we definitely have a bit more of a focus on darker malts. We definitely have a bit more of a focus on slightly richer beer styles. So you'll see porters and stouts. You're also going to start to see some of the barrel-aged beer that we've been maturing for a little while come through in the autumn. So that's that stuff we're pretty excited about.
Cool. Lots to look forward to then.
Yeah, loads. I mean, again, like I said before, it's tough to keep things moving as much as we do. If we had like 4 beer styles that we worked within, that would make our lives much easier. But it's also really exciting for us to do what we do. We're kind of charging ourselves with trying to nail everything first time, which is really hard when we want to achieve really high quality beer. We want to present to the British beer buying public really high quality beers, and at the same time, a lot of the time we're just making something once and putting it on the bar against something that's been made hundreds of times before. That challenge we actually we're relishing it right now. It's really making us grow as a team. It's really pushing us to try and nail down every little aspect of why we don't hit our quality targets, and when we do, how do we repeat that success, even if we're making a different beer style. So yeah, I think what we're presenting in this autumn range. Well, I mean, most of the beer was brewed between July and August, so I guess the up to the minute processes that we're integrating, they've yet to come through. But it's exciting for us just to keep things moving for sure.
Okay, so let's talk about Cloudwater, the brewery, a little bit. You guys are less than a year old, just coming up to your first birthday?
Yeah, it depends. You know what? We don't know which our real birthday is actually. So we have kind of three birthdays in mind.
Like the Queen.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So there's that 15th of September when James, Al, Will, and myself started working full time on the project. I mean, by that stage, James and I had already been working on it for nearly a year, part time behind the scenes. So that's one anniversary on the 15th of September. The other one's 7th of November, when we actually got hold of the keys for the unit and we could start the fit out. And then I think the birthday that we're really going to go with is our first brew day. It makes the most sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's Valentine's Day. So I don't know whether we're going to present a soppy beer every year.
I think you've got to, really. I mean, if you're all about seasonality, so surely you've got to do something special for that. Yeah. I mean, you guys have really hit the ground running.
That's true.
In this last year, in the nicest way possible. You haven't been able to go anywhere without hearing or seeing Cloudwater, either on the bar or in the chatter. Everybody's talking about you guys. That's obviously a testament to your beers and the abilities that you've got.
Sure.
But tell us about this first year. What's it been like for you guys, starting a brewery, building your team, getting the name out there, and how do you attribute such a following that you've grown in such a short space of time? Lots of questions there.
No, it is. Well, I'll start with your last question. I think having somebody like James as our head brewer, starting our brew team off, he's been in the industry for longer than a lot of modern beer consumers have been drinking modern beer, and so his reputation, the work that he's done over his whole career, has definitely brought some attention to what we've done these past few months. I think we add a little bit to that the fact that we were very transparent when we started our whole process. We really tried to keep all kind of marketing stuff out of our communications entirely, and just shared what we're working on that day. So I mean, like one of my greatest pleasures during the setup, which was incredibly difficult. I mean, neither James and I had set up a brewery before, commissioned work by steam engineers or process pipe engineers. You know, even though he'd been in the industry a long time, it was really tough to chart out all that setup process. And when everything arrived and it actually did fit,
Yeah.
we were like really excited and very relieved at the same time. But I think the fact that we were really transparent and we shared that process out, and we had, you know, people replying to photos and saying, hey, like, what's going on? You've got me liking a picture of a goddamn pipe on a Sunday morning first thing, you know. But we really wanted to share all of that work, because the thought of us just trying to like hype and promote what we were gonna be doing just seemed utterly vacuous. To this day, you don't really see us tweet about our beers. You don't see us take pictures of our beers 4 times a day. It's not really what we're about. We'd much rather...
Your community does that for you, the following that you've built.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, you know, we just try to share the stuff that that you guys don't see so much of.
Yeah.
Because that's, I mean, we're really interested in it, and we know we know the folk that support our business are too. And so for us, we take a lot more pride in trying to share some of those insider experiences. That's much more important to us than sort of saying, hey, you know, I hope you're drinking our beer tonight. I don't mind. I'm happy if you do. I just hope you're drinking some good beer.
Yeah.
And you know, at some point in your week, we might feature, and that's pretty cool.
So you were telling me a little bit earlier on how the team's grown as well in
Sure.
that time. So
Yeah.
you started off with 4 of you, and you're up to a team of 9 now.
That's correct. Yeah.
What's that feel like?
Terrifying. I mean, to be charged with the responsibility to look after a team of of 8 employees is nuts.
Yeah.
Especially given that we've only been in production 7 months. But knowing where we want to be, the quality targets that we've set ourselves that we want to achieve next year, we're never going to get there without building more capacity into the brew team, bringing folk on with different types of experiences. So Richard has joined us from a couple of years at Abbeydale Brewery, but he's also just finishing his IBD diploma. Callum's just joined us from a master's program at Heriot Watt, and both of those guys are bringing some experience but also a lot of education to James's 20 years of experience, but you know, he's never been through brewing school.
Yeah.
So they're bringing really nice complementary skill sets and opinions and kind of learning strategies to our processes, and they're having an effect already, and it's chiefly because we've now got more than one experienced brewer to sort of be bouncing ideas. Al in our team has always been James's lead assistant brewer, and Al came to us in the beginning with like phenomenal drive and experience as a home brewer, and so it's nice to see not just James's eyes light up but Al's too, as we now don't just talk about what beer we're going to brew next and a little bit of how we'll get there. You know, we are like picking every single piece of our process apart, and we've got now the experience and the different points of view and the skill sets, I think, to really try and get to the quality level that we want to be at. So it's really exciting for us. I mean, you know, terrifying but exciting.
and you guys are, it's probably fair to say, one of the leading breweries in Manchester now, and Manchester itself has got a really vibrant brewing scene at the moment.
Sure.
What does it mean to Cloudwater to be a part of that brewing scene?
For us, really, it's kind of like a distillation of where we would like to see ourselves nationally. We really want to see ourselves become a brewery that's pushing not just the boundaries of like what seasonal beer means, or not just the boundaries of what good beer is on a national level, but also like what a good brewing community is in Manchester. And we've tried from day one to play a really responsible part. We are I think we pretty much doubled the fermentation capacity of Greater Manchester when we opened up. So we're quite a big player in that scene, but we don't kind of bounce around like big boys. We're always, I can sometimes sell more of Sam's beer at track in a day than I do of my own, because if someone's looking for a split pallet, I'll pass them on to someone local rather than lose a sale with someone. And it feels really good to do that. We're always getting ourselves out there and lending ingredients out and helping someone out with a technical question. This is all quite like day-to-day stuff and a little pedestrian, but it all really helps to consolidate a really nice scene. And our role in helping to put together and facilitate Manchester Brewery Expo earlier on in the year. We did a lot of the legwork. We financed it to take on that burden and make sure that our peers in the city weren't troubled by that, because we really wanted to draw everyone together. And I don't say that because I'm anything other than proud of our collective efforts. As a community, I don't think breweries in Manchester ever before have got around the tables and I think the first time we sat down, I don't think any brewery in Manchester had really spent that much time with everyone else. We sat down and had a bunch of meetings to put the expo together, and it really it's left us all not in the dark anymore. We know each other really well. We don't have any trouble to pick up the phone and say, hey, can you help me out with some key kegs this week, or have you got a bag of hops I can borrow till tomorrow? This happens very regularly. It always happens, but it's happening a lot more in Manchester, and that is behind the scenes something of how we've tried to help that camaraderie develop. So for us playing a part in Manchester's brewery scene, the beer scene up in Manchester, it's as much of having a positive social impact as it is making great beer. Making great beer is what we want to try and do for everyone, but especially in Manchester, to do something that pushes food and drink and pushes that kind of positive scene forward is really what we're about.
Okay, and while we're talking about events in Manchester, it'd be remiss of us to talk about Indie Man. You guys are involved in that quite heavily this year. You're one of the sponsor breweries, and seeing your name down against doing a few events, and there's a few bits going on. Give us a bit of a feel for what Cloudwater's presence is going to be like at Indie Man this year.
Yeah, so we met up with Johnny and the IMBC team a good few times, months and months ago, and I think IMBC really wanted to put a bit more of a spotlight on the regional scene up in the northwest, which is really cool. And we also wanted to play a big part in the festival this year. So we're the glass sponsors. Actually, just today they've taken delivery of the Craftmaster 1 glasses that they chose for the festival. We were really happy to work with them and sponsor that, and as a result we've gained ourselves a really nice position in the festival. We've got a lovely space that we're going to try and present some of our seasonal beer, some of our barrel matured beer, and some of the sour stuff that we're starting to work on too. So
exciting times.
Yeah, very much so. Because we're very much focused on exploring seasonality, but that's not all. Again, going back to Al, our lead assistant brewer, he's utterly fanatical about Brettanomyces. He pretty much put it in everything, I think, if he could. and for the most part, I'd support that. But so we really wanted to make sure that we opened up a program looking at other yeasts, other styles of fermentation and maturation. So we're really excited at IMBC to premiere some of this stuff that we've been working on behind the scenes for the first time. So that'll be very, very exciting.
Well, I'm looking forward to that because I'm got a good few days up there myself.
Same.
Okay, so looking into the future then, obviously we've got autumn range, then we'll have winter range coming.
Correct.
And then as you heard it here first, the exclusive Valentine's beer that you'll be doing to celebrate your first birthday. Big picture, what's next for you guys? Where do you see Cloudwater going in the next year or so?
I mean, really, our key focus is the quality's got to go right up. We're happy with the start that we've made for sure, but there is a long way we want to go. So I know that's not really like going to be a great statement to make at this point. I think that's just one of the things that we're working hard on to kind of bring that quality through next year. Part of the beauty of the way that we run this brewery is I can't really answer that question.
That's fine.
Because what we do is keep ourselves wide open. If we see trends come through that we really want to work with, and they fit with our sort of seasonal objectives, we can just work with new beer styles. We can work with new flavors at the drop of a hat. We never backed ourselves into a corner of having to maintain maybe 80 or 90% of the core range and a few kind of sprinkles of seasonal stuff on top of that. Everything that we do is wide open because the scene's moving forward all the time. And a bunch of folk this year sort of said to me, are you going to make the Bergamo Hopfen Weisse again next spring? Well, quite possibly, because it was such a nice beer and we'd love to make it again, but we'll be a different brewery next spring and you'll be a different consumer in a different marketplace, and all of our needs and wants and hopes and dreams about what beer can be or what it should be, they'll all be a little bit different. So I think I'd like to think that next year we're nailing the quality a lot more than we think we are now, and I'd like to think that we're just still got our eyes wide open and seeing what we can explore and what we can bring to the marketplace that's exciting and flavourful and just like that, really.
Have you been surprised at the reaction of the beer community to what you're doing? Because people have really embraced what you're doing, and I can't think off the top of my head of any other breweries that are kind of approaching it the way that you are at the moment. And as I say, I think certainly people that we chat to in the community, as I said at the beginning, nobody's got a bad word for anything that you guys have done, and people seem to have really embraced it. Has that surprised you guys?
Yeah, because there certainly are people that have very strong opinions and aren't afraid to make those strong opinions public, even if they are not as positive as they could be. But of course, we're thrilled that we feel like we've been given a mandate to keep pushing on and keep exploring. At any point that could stop, and people could find it a bit tiresome that they can't develop a relationship with a beer. We like that with other breweries, that we can develop like a long-term relationship with a particular beer or beer style. And so we know we're not offering that to customers, but I guess 99.9% of the marketplace is doing that for us. So we are really thrilled and humbled by the support so far, for sure. Definitely surprising, because we really didn't know what to expect. We certainly thought about what we were going to do quite a lot, and we certainly referenced what we hoped were going to be much broader principles. So the revitalisation of British food culture comes a lot from a focus on seasonality and produce first cooking, and so we really had in mind that if we took that same approach that we find so damn exciting with chefs and modern British food, that we might find modern British beer in that way just as exciting. And so the fact that people have resonated with what we're doing is amazing. It really is.
Okay. Well, listen, Paul, it's been great chatting to you. Really enjoyed it. Where can people find out more about Cloudwater? We
do try and keep our blog up to date. That's cloudwaterbrew.co. You can get to our blog from that, and we do try and keep a good presence on social media too. So you can keep a look out on our Instagram feed and Twitter feed, and we'll be telling you a good deal of what we're up to there. And certainly, if for any of your listeners out there that are in Manchester or for the night or in that region full stop, we open our brewery tap every weekend. And that's a great chance to come down and ask us every single question you could possibly want. We run that space with quite a hard cap on numbers. It's table service, it's advanced booking, just so that we can preserve that environment where folk can come down, speak to us every week that they want to, and get stuck in and ask us what we're working on. And in some cases, we try beer straight out of tank, and it's pretty fun. So
people can find out about that from your website.
Most definitely.
To your website.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, as I say, Paul, listen, thanks for your time. Really
Pleasure.
appreciate it. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Cheers.